Google search of an anarchy symbolism.
I plugged it into Chat GPT. I was like, tell me about anarchy and the history of anarchist thought.
Oh wow, the Chat GPT putting in work these days.
It is for real. Well, welcome. I guess I should say something. I've been trying to be more consistent with my the way I introduce the stream. So, what's up, everyone? It is Sunday, April 16th, 7:39 and 51 seconds, 52 seconds, 53 seconds. I can't keep track. The seconds just fly by. And I have with me friend of the show, and actually, you know what? Long time buddy of mine now. We've been around for a bit since November-ish of last year, somewhere around that time, maybe October even. But
Yeah.
Provo Kid, welcome to the stream.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And yeah, it's been a while. And it's a unique experience having you as a friend, Coder, because uh, I think people might assume just off of our maybe philosophies, ideologies, that two people like us wouldn't get together or even have a friendly relationship. But it's been nice getting to know you and hearing your thoughts and your views, even though I would say they don't necessarily always align with mine. But that's also why I like listening to you. And I think it's important that we don't tune out to other voices and other ideas and other people. And I like you. I may not like all your ideas, but I do like listening to your ideas, Coder. That's for sure.
Yeah,
So thank you
definitely.
for having me on, and I appreciate it. I look forward to talking about anarchy and kind of my views on it, maybe your views, and just have fun, really.
Yeah, and I feel the same about listening to your views on things. And I mean, obviously, a lot of my content is me having kind of like conversations with people I disagree with pretty strongly, and normally they're a little bit antagonistic. But I don't really want that to be like the only thing I do moving forward. I want to have like interesting conversations that are a little bit more like just friendly. I don't know. It's it's kind of exhausting fighting with people all the time, and I'm sure we can beef a little bit, but like I don't know. At the end of the day, when I have beef with people, I just generally shrug it off. Like it doesn't like, unless they do something like really awful, then I don't, it doesn't really like change my opinion of them or anything, or like make me dislike them as a person. So um, yeah.
Certainly, it has its time and place. I do like mixing it up or kicking up dust, but it is
Hmm.
nice to have maybe just general dialogue or conversation, even about maybe a contentious topic. I think anarchy is almost contentious in some ways, the way I look at it, because
Certainly.
everybody has their own idea of what it is and what it means. And I think, like, as I share my opinion throughout your show, I think people will even say, like, oh, he doesn't know what anarchy is. This guy's an idiot. And I welcome all criticisms. And, I don't claim to know the totality of anarchy. In fact, what I would like to discuss, if anything, is perhaps individualist anarchy,
Hmm.
which is a subset of the different types of anarchy of all kinds, like anarcho-capitalist, anarcho-communist, anarcho-socialist.
Hmm.
Just put anarchy in front of something, and I think you have a group. But I identify more maybe as an individual anarchist. And if you were looking for a philosopher who would, if you're like, oh, where's Provo Kid getting his ideas from? Maybe in part, I think his name's Max Stern.
Max
M-A,
Stern.
or is it Max Stern? Anarchist. Max Sterner.
Oh,
Um,
Max Sterner. Okay, I've heard the name.
and the reason I would say, if anything, that kind of line of thinking draws me more towards it. It's the idea of the distinction between the pursuit of freedom and the pursuit of ownership, right? So I
Hmm.
don't really I believe freedom's the goal in life. I think personal ownership and ownership over like your life, your time, your resources, your job, whatever it is, owning things is perhaps far more important than I think other things, I would say.
Interesting.
But
Okay.
I mean, that's kind of my view
Hmm.
generally on anarchy. Would you share yours with me?
Yeah, yeah. So I'm trying to think of like when I first was introduced to the concept. It's been a while. I want to say it was probably like during during the rise of like all of the different like bread tube channels, you know, like in response to like the kind of YouTube being dominated by like the like center to far right,
Yeah.
and there were all those channels like I want to say like I think Thought Slime made a video about anarchy a long time ago, that I really liked, and so like that I think that was the one that like first really got me interested. And then there was also the guy Non-Compete, who I think is kind of cringe sometimes now. Also, Thought Slime's kind of cringe sometimes too. I think everyone's kind of cringe sometimes. I'm kind of cringe sometimes.
Yes.
But generally, when I think anarchy, I'm like, I mean, the word itself, to like in my mind, is like without hierarchy, right? So I don't generally think like, oh, there needs to be absolutely no hierarchy in any context, whatever. I mean, like the classic example is like if you're on a boat, and like only one person really knows how to sail the ship, then that person should probably be able to like command some degree of like orders, you know, and like people should probably listen to what that person has to say and what that person's asking them to do. So for me, it's more about like a skepticism of authority and like a skepticism of hierarchy, like wherever there is like power that could be used to like get someone to do something specific, then there should be a lot of skepticism around like them having that power, and if it's justified, you know, like in the boat example, that seems like a reasonable one. If you're like parents, you know, and you're a small child, they should probably like be able to like have power over like what you do for the most part to keep you safe, keep you alive, and things like this. So in general, like for me, it's about like finding, or it's about being skeptical of hierarchy and trying to find like look for justification if there is justification, and if there's not, then well, maybe that authority should not be held by that person.
Yeah. I actually, you know, I relate to, and I even appreciate and would say, yeah, I hold some of those views as well, to some degree. And the thing I would maybe detach from is the idea of attaching to authority or a structured system, to where like, I think most anarchists are in a battle against hierarchy and trying to maybe change it or implement their own system, or and I'm against that, right? Like I don't even believe in voting. I don't vote. I don't think
super
that changing
cringe.
I don't believe in changing the system. I think that attaching yourself to the system is kind of the opposite of what I would see myself as an individual anarchist, right? But I do appreciate the skepticism you have in authority, and I just wholly don't trust it. I'm kind of like the extreme of that. Like you have skepticism, I would say I have no trust, and therefore I don't have belief in participating in that system or even changing it. Where I think some anarchists believe they can change the system, and they can make it better, and I don't think anarchy is for that in any way. But what are your thoughts?
Well, I guess I kind of want to push back a little on the what you said about voting, and being like part of the system or whatever. Like I think it's I don't know if you can, I don't know if just like abstaining from the system or whatever, really like you're still impacted by it. Like you still, if you live in a country with like rules and laws and things that like those things are going to impact you. That system impacts you whether or not you like say that you don't want to be a part of it. Like you are, you know, you are impacted by it whether you want to be or not. And so like if you do have any sort of voice in that system, it seems like, and if you do think that system like could be a better one and could, you know, cause less harm to you or anyone else that you care about, or just other people in general, then it seems to me like pretty reasonable to push back and try to do what little you can to change that system, and especially at a local level. I think voting is really important. I mean, it's definitely easy to feel really discouraged if you only look at like federal elections. You only look at like the presidential election, and especially with the electoral college. You know, depending on what state you're in, your vote might not feel like it matters at all. And in fact, I would argue, in like depending on the state you live in, your vote might matter less than another state. But yeah, that's what do you think about that?
So I agree with you wholeheartedly in some regards to the idea and the capacity that if you do vote, if you do put any weight in voting, the heaviest weight is local. Couldn't
Hmm.
agree with you more. I do think that does matter because your voice, at least in Utah, we have we have snow, so we need our snow plows. We need the roads salted. We need these things taken care of. We need the potholes filled,
Hmm.
and I think the best way to make sure those things are taken care of are being active in your local political system.
Hmm.
So to that, I do agree with you, and I don't necessarily advocate that everybody disconnect with voting, and I'm not arguing that. I would argue maybe perhaps on a federal level, I think voting's an illusion, but on a local and state level, I would say there's a lot of potential for not only your vote to matter, but maybe your energy and the way you impact your community to also, that does shape I think what would you put it, the political climate or whatever, and it could increase I would guess the kind of world you might want to create,
Hmm.
whether that be nice sidewalks and clean streets. So I do agree with you on that, Coder.
Okay, interesting. Um, well, let's see. We need to find some. Maybe we need to find something that we do disagree on. Something maybe something a little spicier. Because I
Well,
that yeah. Oh no,
what
go ahead,
about
please.
this?
Yeah.
So a lot of what I think this is a contentious topic to many, and I like to hear your thoughts on it, Coder.
Hmm.
Um, so I do like as an individual anarchist, I live my life, and they call it a Crowley-like thing, but I think it's do as thou wilt, right? And it's
Do as
unfortunate
thou
that
will.
it gets associated with Aleister Crowley because not a good guy, not a
Mm-hmm.
good person. And but the doing what you want to, right? Doing your own will.
Mm-hmm.
I live by that, and I think a lot of people think. And as I've come out or whatever people say as an individual anarchist, they say, oh, you're a Satanist, you have satanic beliefs, you're a Crowleyan, or
Mm-hmm.
things of that nature. And so, what are your thoughts? Do you maybe agree with do what thou wilt, or do you push back on it? What would you say?
I don't know if I have a strong opinion on that. Like the do what you will. I mean, hmm. I'll have to parse that one a little bit more because I'm sorry, I was trying to add you on Pokemon Unite while I was listening to that, and I think I might have like lost some of the first half of what you were saying.
Oh,
Um,
no, no worries.
but
I'll
yeah, please
rephrase.
elaborate, and I'll try to pick
So,
up.
as an individual anarchist, a big part of that is doing what you want or doing what I will, right? And
Yeah.
so that gets associated with Satanism
Oh, okay.
or things of that nature. And I'm wondering, like, what are your thoughts? Do you believe it's almost attached to libertarianism, right?
Hmm.
I can do what you want, you can do what you want. Let's just not hurt each other.
Hmm.
And
Yeah,
I think you might. Go ahead.
in general, I agree with that for the for the most part. I think there are like with of course within limits, but I think it's interesting the libertarian thing because I do kind of consider myself like something like a left libertarian, I guess. Um, like libertarian socialist is a phrase that gets thrown around that I kind of vibe with. Thank you, AI enhanced cinema. I'm not a trans man, but that's very kind of you. But sorry, I hear a lot of people who I hear identify themselves as anarchists tend to be these like anarcho-capitalists, and
Yes.
I don't really think like to me like I don't think like capitalism seems like inherently hierarchical, like almost by necessity, like because it is about like this private ownership of property and private ownership of corporations and being able to like get having some like that like unchallenged authority over the people who like work beneath you, um, and that seems like not anarchy to me, you know.
Um, Absolutely. And I think like when you bring that up, I've I've thought about this as well because it seems to me that I feel like anarchism, and when I look at individual anarchism, I see uh, no room for collective, right? Like
Mm.
it's anarchy's like an individual thing
Mm-hmm.
on an individual level, and when I see it move into a collective, I think it just becomes kind of like a a faux name. It's not real. It's almost like a bunch of, I don't even know why they call themselves anarchists. They're basically just libertarians at that point, right? Like
Hmm.
they're saying we're going against the system, but let's all work together in a collective and build a commune. And to me, that's not. I mean, it can be called anarchy, and when people say, "Oh, a homestead's anarchy," I think anarchy is actually inside of your heart, right? It lives inside of you. It's not something out in the world you're trying to create. It's anarchy in yourself is um, tearing down your conditioning that you were raised around, tearing down the yeah, basically that conditioning that's been placed on us throughout our whole life. And then once you can tear that down, you can find out who you want to be and what that will really is, and you can finally do what your will
Hmm.
would be. What do you? I mean, so to your point, yeah, I don't. These anarcho-capitalists, I don't see them really as anarchists. I understand,
Hmm.
like they use the name, but I see libertarians. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I feel exactly the same way. To this individual anarchy thing, I think I guess we'd be talking about like two different things when we talk about you kind of differentiate it with the collective anarchy, and the individual anarchy. I guess in my mind, like one of the best ways for someone to be able to achieve that kind of individual anarchy, or for as many people as possible to achieve that individual anarchy, probably has a lot to do with challenging authority of the state and of existing like social structures. So I think there's kind of an interplay between these two things, but I do see the distinction.
Yes, I mean, I appreciate you see that. So, I mean, let me tap back into the do as thou will. Do you
Hmm.
think that's like a satanic thing, like doing what you want with your life and pursuing your own will? Because I get pushback on that. What are your thoughts?
I don't. I generally wouldn't label like the word satanic is not like one that I use very often to label anything. Unless someone's like telling me that they worship Satan. I don't know like what else like because I'm not a particularly religious person, right?
Yeah.
So I don't think it's satanic. I think it's probably good. I think I like individual freedom. I like individuals like being able to do what they would like to do.
Hmm. And with that, so when I think of like anarchists, people think of Antifa,
Hmm.
right? And so I almost put Antifa in the same exact group as I say the anarcho-capitalists are, right? They're doing the same thing. Where like, what was that? They had the Chaz Zone,
Hmm.
right? Where they eventually just turn into a collective, right? They morph into a socialist. Everything evolves, right? So if you're a radical, even you radical, I wonder what your
Hmm.
thoughts on this are. Once you're progressive, right, and you achieve the things you're looking for, don't you become a conservative in trying to maintain what you've progressed towards?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, you become I don't know if I would use the word conservative there per se. You would want to I want to conserve like human rights, right? I want to
Yep.
conserve like freedom. I want to conserve like the rights of. I mean, I said human rights, but that's kind of a blanket. I would like to. I mean, we obviously just had like Roe v. Wade, for example, overturned. I would have liked to conserve the existing like access for people to seek that like medical procedure and stuff.
Hmm.
So the way I think of like right wing and left wing in general, is kind of more about like your willingness to critique like existing structures, or your willingness to embrace like better structures, I guess, as they come, or find flaws in structures. Like a lot of right wing thought it does tend to be about conserving, but it can also be about like reasserting like structures that have been already removed. Like conservatives were not trying to conserve the like an abortion ban because there wasn't one. They were trying to re-implement that because they believe that society needs to have that. So that it's more about these like rigid social structures that they think can't change. And I think it's another reason that like you'll find like a lot of like racist people, like really hyper people who are really obsessed with like racialization, tend to be on like the far right, because they think that there's this like rigid structure that is race that exists in society and that it needs to be maintained in a certain way. And that there's no the critiques of it that we've had and like throughout history, as people have come to understand, like, I mean, I think there's always been people who have understood like the problems with the construction of race, but as more and more people have like come to recognize the flaws in that construction, like the right wing thought has been to reassert those and to I mean, right now we have these like all these bans on critical race theory and stuff, and it tends to be about trying to get people away from understanding this structure, in my mind, and by doing so, you have a generation of people, or you would have a generation of people that comes up not understanding the conditions that the people around them are in and why they're that way, and therefore it makes it easier to assert that, oh, this is just the natural order of things. I know that was kind of a lot, but
no, I think it was a good response. And to unpack it a little bit, I do see what you're saying, where some conservatives aren't always conserving. In fact, it wouldn't be going towards progress. You would say it's regression, right? Or but in their mind, that's kind of maybe how it would look. But and I do what you're saying does resonate with me in some sense. But what I would say in response to that is I think some of these issues, you brought up a few of them, and you could talk about each one of them individually, but like, so with the Roe v. Wade thing, right? So I think that issue got politicized into the left-right paradigm, and I think structurally, right, because we're looking at the structures in the system, I think that law, right, that was reversed, right, Roe v. Wade, it's the proper path for that should have been through Congress and then the Senate, and that's the way the law should have been, what would it be called, made uniform throughout the country. So by the Supreme Court acknowledging that, right, and taking away some of its power, I think that was a good thing, right? The Supreme Court shouldn't be this, law-making machine. I think if we're going to make laws in our country, it should be done through Congress and then the Senate. I think that's probably the best way to do it. So although, there's some of these problems, I think they open up windows of opportunity to for better solutions, right? So if the majority of Americans want women to have what would it be called, the right over their body, correct?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
I think it's a healthcare procedure,
but yeah.
Healthcare procedure. I think the best path forward for that would be to take it to Congress and not allow our Supreme Court to become close to what of our executive branch is becoming, which is this, endless. It's almost like a tyrant, right? It's becoming an executive order machine, where it's surpassing some of these other systems we've put in place to give the people more of a voice. So,
I would. So, in terms of the Supreme Court and the Roe v. Wade thing in particular, I would agree that it would be better if there was like a federal assertion of like abortion access, than like the Supreme Court having this kind of obviously shaky ruling, because it was so easy to overturn as soon as we had like enough conservative judges on the panel. But I think that regardless of that, I would just agree. Yeah, like I would agree it'd be better that way, but I still don't think it was. I guess like my pushback would be, I don't think that that's the real reason that it was overturned. I don't think it was overturned because like the conservative judges were like, this is the wrong way to approach this problem. I think it was a decades-long battle that they waged pretty effectively, and they established tons of these like trigger laws across the country in various states. So like as soon as it was overturned, it became like almost impossible to get access in a lot of different states. It was kind of this more coordinated effort, And
I see that point, and I understand why you have that perspective, and I don't really have an argument against it, but I don't necessarily agree with you. And to tie this conversation maybe back into anarchy, I would say one reason why this Supreme Court is a good example for me, like why I don't believe in voting, because the Supreme Court justice on the federal level is, they're quote unquote elected, but they're selected, right? They all come from 3 different schools, right? And so that to me is representative of even a larger problem we have, right? Like, why is the Supreme Court compiled of individuals from only 3 law schools?
Sure.
Right? And
can I pause you for 1 second there? I do want to, because there are people in the chat that they think I'm not reading them or anything. And I just want to, no, this isn't like a no chat stream or anything. We're just having a conversation right now, so I'm not like going through your individual chats, but I am reading them. I'm seeing what you're saying, and I appreciate you all being here. Yeah, just wanted to clarify that. But sorry, go ahead.
Is the chat cooking right now?
Yeah, a little bit. It's doing. I mean, the Thorpe. We got the Thorpes here.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
I need to check it out. I try not to read chat. Throws me off my game.
I get that. You know what, Ben?
Shout out to the chat. Drop a like if you can.
Ben, I am neurodivergent. Not autistic, but I have ADHD, which qualifies me as neurodivergent. I have friends. We like to call it neurospicy. But anyway, go ahead, Provo. You're saying all the Supreme Court? I wasn't aware of this. They all went to like the same like 3 law schools or whatever.
Yeah, and typically it was like 2 law schools. I think if you look at each Supreme Court justice, it comes down to 3 law schools. What are they, like laws, Harvard or Stanford, and Yale? I mean, I can look it up. Supreme Court justices, law schools. And so this is a list of law schools attended by the United States Supreme Court justices. Harvard has 22 alumni and 18 they have 22 people who've been in the Supreme Court. Yale's had 11. Columbia Law School's had 7. And 3 justices. Where's this? Sorry, this is a long. So we have a couple different schools, perhaps, but they're from Have you ever heard of Transylvania University?
Transylvania University? No, I have not.
That was from 1780, man. Thank God they got rid of that school. What a terrible name.
What was the issue, or what was it all about? Oh, before you answer, AI enhanced cinema. Adderall is not meth, okay? Just because they have, in fact, the chemical distinction is a massive one. It is an amphetamine, but that doesn't make it meth. That's actually a common misperception or misconception. But go ahead, Provo.
So I'm just trying to. So let's just do Alito Jr. got their JD from Yale. Justice Amy Barrett got hers from Notre Dame, so she's a new one, which is nice to see, right? And so when I look at diversity of the Supreme Court, I'm also looking for academic diversity. And then we have Ketanji Brown Jackson. She went to Harvard. And then we have Neil Gorsuch went to Harvard. Then we have Kavanaugh went to Yale.
Well, aren't these just kind of the top law schools in the country? Like, it kind of makes sense that we would see like people coming from the top law schools, regardless. It kind of stands to reason.
So this feeds into, you should be on my side here. This feeds into systematic oppression, the fact that only the elite go to the Ivy League schools. So are they really a representation of America? So like these justices went to private schools too, probably, right? So it's a long line they've been waiting in, that you and I and nobody else are allowed to get in that line. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I do agree with a lot of that, what you're saying there. Like, I'm certainly not I have a lot of issues with the structure of the Supreme Court as it stands. So I agree that like the nature of those schools does consolidate power within like particular like families, and I would dare to call some of them dynasties. But it does stand to reason that that like they would come from those top schools even without that.
And yeah, but there are also a lot of good law schools in the United States, and
sure,
and a good thing about lawyers is it's almost like, law schools help, but like who you are and how you practice and everything else kind of makes you either the judge or lawyer you would become, right? Because you can have a doctor who goes to a good maybe medical school, good complete idiot at the end of the day. And I guess what I'm saying is that if you look at it, I think you're opposed to nepotism in government, nepotism in business and things like that. But academic nepotism is a real thing. This idea that these higher tier educational systems are outperforming everybody else at such a level that they've become exclusive to the fact that only they are allowed to be selected for the Supreme Court justice, right? And I like, to me, when I look at people who go to state college or other colleges, private colleges, what they are entitled to is to become a Supreme Court justice for their state. That's the highest level they will ever achieve, right? But if you go to these private schools like Phillips Exeter Academy, that's 2 schools, but they combined them. One's Phillips, one's Exeter. And then these are feeder schools to Ivy League schools, right? And so if you look at Phillips Exeter alumni list, you got Philip Ray, former director of the FBI, you got founder of Oracle, you got Zuckerberg, you got the Bushes. The list goes on, right? And this it starts in high school, goes to college, right? And then it goes to graduate school. And I think that you can look at the Supreme Court, and it's still although you might see they have left-leaning views or they have right-leaning views, they still are a club, an exclusive club, right?
Sure. Yeah, and no, I was gonna point out John Smith in the chat was talking about I said they are. I said I would dare to call them dynasties. I did use that word, but he mentioned earlier, where is it? Wait, what happened? It was here we go. He forgets these law schools are part of the old WASP caste system, like the white Anglo-Saxon Protestant, and I mean I agree with that. Like a lot of these schools didn't even allow like black people or any quote unquote undesirables historically, so I totally agree with that. In fact, I had a debate a while back with a kind of a neo-Nazi guy, Martinez perspective, on the topic of white privilege. And one of the prime examples that I mentioned in that conversation was about like legacy admissions, which is a perfect example of a privilege that can really only, for a lot of these schools, only apply to white people because they didn't. Like if you were black, you literally if your parents weren't allowed to go to the school, then you have absolutely no way to benefit from legacy admissions because there's no legacy there.
I agree with you on that, and that's kind of, I think we both agree, that's maybe my contention with the Supreme Court. I like the conversation we just had, and I think we can move it into, you brought up another issue. What was it? It was a contentious one. I think we could have a good discussion about as well.
Do you but I know we set up this the Pokemon Unite thing. Do you want to play while we chat? And a bunch of people, they're all, especially Grace and Ben, but there are others as well who are pushing to eventually like open this up a little bit. So maybe after a certain point.
Show.
Well, I'm saying
I can't figure out the control, like the.
Go ahead.
How to add you, dude.
No, I actually so I already sent you your friend request in game. So if you go to the I think it's ZR or ZL on the main screen, if you tap that, there's like this menu of like all your personal buttons, whatever, and there's a friends tab, and if you click on that, you should see a friend request from me.
Okay.
And then,
yeah, all right.
And once you accept that, then I should be able to go to Unite. And I should be able to invite you now.
I'm still loading on my end.
Yeah, no worries.
Okay.
Let me know when you get there. But yeah, I'm happy to bring a few people on. The Discord link. I'll post the Discord link in the chat so that people are already able to join. I'm always happy to have people join the server anyway. Although I guess I have. I don't know has Ben ever even been in my server. I don't know if I ever actually let him in, but if he joins now, welcome to the rad room, Ben. Blue Pill says Andrew Tate is my dad. Well, good for you, King.
It's been a good conversation so far.
Yeah, I agree.
Oh, the other thing, I mean, we've talked about it in different capacities. CRT, right?
Ah, yes.
And I know that's one of your issues. And I think to sum up our previous discussion, maybe not succinctly, but in some way, I disagree with almost, you could have CRT or the exact opposite. I disagree with all of it.
CRT?
Right? Like,
well, I guess tell me, like, when you hear CRT, like, what does that mean to you?
So CRT would be a teaching philosophy a teacher implements into their program when they're teaching whatever curriculum. It could be math, it could be PE, it could be literally anything. But the point of teaching would be to include maybe context to the lesson that is insightful to the students about history and whatever else the teacher. Honestly, it's so open to interpretation for the teacher. It's really up to them. But what do you, did I
Okay.
do that justice, or what do you think?
I so my the way I usually approach this the CRT topic, I like there's a really good piece on it in the like Encyclopedia Britannica has a really good kind of breakdown of like what critical race theory is. So their definition is that it's an intellectual and social movement and loosely organized framework of legal analysis that is based on the premise that race is not a natural, biologically grounded feature of physically distinct subgroups of human beings. So like the race is not this like biological thing that like historically it was just kind of asserted as, right. It was kind of used as like justification like for like I mean when the U.S. was being founded on the genocides and slavery that it was founded on, that you needed, especially when you're espousing these values of freedom and liberty and human rights, you kind of have to have some caveat there if you're going to be engaging in the things that these people were engaging in, right? And so race was kind of this natural hierarchy. To again bring it back to the things, the kind of the root of the conversation. Race was suggested to be this natural hierarchy that kind of justified like white rule and what manifest destiny, which in my opinion is the conspiracy theory that the creator of the universe wanted white people to own North America. And so, sorry, the last part of that would be that the main thing critical race theory I think focuses on outside of that, those kind of abstractions, would be the more specific examples of the way that race was encoded into the law, and the way that it interacted with like groups of people and racialized people, and therefore led to material like consequences for those groups of people.
Okay. And so, I think that perspective is what it's wrapped in is truth, right? So I'm not going to disagree with that. But my problem, I sent an invite to you on the Teams thing.
Oh, interesting. Oh, I see it. Hang on. Let me try to click on it. Invitation. Accept. I accept.
So, okay.
And
Now,
sorry, let me respond to a couple other things. Yasmin asked, how long did it take you to learn JavaScript? And Blue Pill said you never stop. That's very true. But yeah, I'm actually still, like, I've been working with JavaScript for like a decade, and I still like find out like neat little things that I didn't know before. So it never really ends. But the more you build with it, the more you use it, the more comfortable you'll get with it. But
what just happened?
I'm not sure. I think we're in a lobby together, so we should be able to. I don't know. I think you get to. You're in control.
I'm getting network errors.
Uh-oh.
All right, I'm pressing start.
Yeah, we're waiting. Okay. Cool. Goofy.
And so for me, when I think about like kind of the story you tell, I feel like if you were to, well, I don't even need to discuss that. I think it's fine. But my point would be of contention is rather that you're discussing if educational system is a machine, maybe a car. You're talking about what should be included in the engine, right? Oh,
yeah.
I got.
Oh, I think you didn't hit OK, so you got kicked out.
I'm sorry, man.
Yeah, you gotta pay attention. It's okay. We're having it's an engaging conversation as well. Oh, sorry, Yasmin. How long did it take me to code? I did 4 years of computer science. That kind of I like was trained in the trenches of that. But afterwards, when I like got a job afterwards is where I really started learning how to use those things. Like I had the basics like really deeply ingrained in my mind, and like how to do how to problem solve, and what like what computer science can do and what code can do, and the kinds of problems it can solve and the kinds it can't. And that's kind of what a computer science degree is all about. But then actually in practice, like learning a language, those fundamentals get implemented when you're like building projects and stuff. Sorry.
No worries. Good chat, man. Don't forget to hit the like, subscribe, share.
Yeah, please do. I'm sending you an invitation.
I sent you one too. I'll
Okay.
join you. I
Okay.
trust you.
Okay.
How do you join? How do you accept?
I think there's a
I got it.
yeah. Okay. There's a little icon that pops up.
Um, so what I was saying is you're talking about the engine of the machine, right?
Sure.
And I say the car, right? You're compulsed to get in it. And I disagree with the compulsory fashion of getting into the educational system, right? Like if it was optional, you know what? Make it CRT, make it whatever the hell you want. Um,
Make sure you hit ready
I
here.
really, I really don't.
When you
I
say
think I,
compulsory, what are you talking about? Like public education, or are you talking about like college? Like
yeah.
what? Yeah. Okay. Just
So
yeah. Go ahead.
public education is compulsory, right? So
Hmm.
from the time you're 6 to 18 years old, obviously state to state you have exemptions or um, they handle education differently. But uh, I disagree with the fact that it's compulsory, right? So arguing about what the milieu is or what the formula should be, to me seems a bit misguided on what the real problem with our educational system is, right? It's compulsory, right? There
Um,
is no freedom in being compulsed to be like being as a parent having your kid being taken away from you unless, right, you can do X, Y, and Z, homeschool, private school,
mhm.
charter school.
Yeah, there are all of these existing alternatives, right? I think
For
you have to have
privileged classes, by the way, for
what?
privileged class,
Oh yeah,
those are
yeah, for sure.
alternatives are only for privileged classes, right?
Yeah, I agree with that. Um,
Which is a problem. So,
well,
what do you,
I guess the bigger problem I have is that like the unprivileged classes tend to like have these like yes they have to go to public schools, but they also have like worse public schools. Um,
absolutely, and they
and
have to go to them.
but like I don't know if I don't think it would be better if they went to private schools instead.
Oh no, I'm not saying private schools are I'm saying it should be optional, right?
Mm. Yeah, I'm not sure where I land on that one.
Why not?
That's interesting. I well, because I think they're probably it probably makes sense to have some um like if we because we do live in like a country with that like has like so many millions of people and we have all these systems and things that are in place for better or for worse and it's probably good if we have some standard like some degree of standardized way for people to get an understanding like get an insight of how these systems work and how they can engage and navigate them and I think that if we have a lot of people who are whose families like decide to opt them out of those systems, I think it almost inherently puts them at a disadvantage compared to people who are getting getting an education about those systems. You know.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, but it should still be optional, right?
But
Like,
when you say optional, you mean I think in practice we're talking about it's being optional not for the child but for the parents.
yeah,
Hmm.
they should have the choice of whether they send their kid to the school or not, right? So then they could choose basically what kind of life they want their kid to have, and if the system is good enough, right, and it's doing the things you're saying it should do, it should be a no-brainer for people to drop their kid off at school, right?
Hmm.
Um, that's my thought on that. But basically, the contention is you can have CRT, you can have anything you want,
Hmm.
but just make it optional for the parents in 100% of the ways, right?
Yeah, I mean, I see what you're saying. I just think it's a different conversation, you know. Like I whether or not I don't think that I would land that like school like there shouldn't that it shouldn't be compulsory at least not right now. But like I think even if I did, I would still think that like there are more important conversations to be had as things stand currently about what's taught in the schools. Since I mean, at the moment they are compulsory. I don't think it's going to change anytime soon, and
But
there is a lot of political power being asserted in terms of what is taught in these schools. So I think that's kind of where I would focus my energy right now because it's just more meaningful and like more pragmatic in terms of what's happening like in the moment.
and I understand that that sentiment you have, but my thought is though, like we live in a free country, but if you
Mm-hmm.
don't do what the government says and send your kid to school, they get you get in trouble, right? Like how
For sure.
free are we, Radical Coder? So like
Yeah.
you say, it might not be that big of a deal to you, but I think personal freedoms and like what you're allowed to do with your children. And if you're in a disadvantaged, marginalized community and you don't have the resources to send your kid to a charter school, to send your kid to a private school,
Mm-hmm.
or to homeschool, and you have to send them to maybe an inner city school with lots of violence, gang problems,
Sure.
How is that beneficial at the end of the day to that family when they could maybe, if given the proper resources, educate the child at home, right?
Well, I guess the problem is that, like, regardless, the problem is they don't have those resources, right? Like, even if
Agreed.
in either direction. So like even in the public schools, they don't have those resources. So I think it's gonna be a harder push to get those resources. Like, I mean, like, I'm in favor of like reparations and stuff that would probably put more resources like in the hands of families that need them, that we were just referring to. But like, again, I don't see any of that happening anytime soon.
Well, me neither. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
you're right about that. But that's my problem though, is that nobody's looking at the main issue, which is schools compulsory.
Maybe I don't know if it's the main issue or just a different issue, but I understand like why you like your issues with it. I think in terms of just a kind of a raw freedom perspective. But I don't know if I don't know if it would be like a better world if school wasn't compulsory. Uh, in fact, I kind of worry that it might be worse.
Really?
Yeah.
The rules would still apply. Like if I drop my kid at school, they wouldn't have the freedom to then leave, right? I'd
Hmm.
be entrusting them to the state just as much as
Hmm.
they are, they're already entrusted.
Sure.
And the state's entrusted to protecting our children, and they don't even do that good of a job at it, to be honest, right?
Hmm.
I think we have a lot of other problems. But to anarchy, though, right? Let's
Hmm.
bring it back home,
Yes.
Coder. Anarchy. Do you see yourself as an anarchist in any way, or like,
Hmm?
how do you define your political leanings? Are you just a Democrat, or like, or your philosophy? How would you put it?
So I guess the easiest label that I use is I would just call myself like a progressive.
Okay.
Although I do consider myself like left of liberals, because of my critiques of capitalism, my issues with like capitalism. Um, but and I would say I have like anarchist sympathies in terms of the way I described anarchy earlier, as being like very skeptical, as much as possible of authority as it's imposed on people. And so, in that, like, I think you would need like a good reason to justify forcing people to go to school. I think there is a pretty good reason as it stands. I obviously, again, there are a lot of problems with it. Um, but I do empathize, or I guess sympathize. Maybe empathize. I think I empathize with the issues with like forcing people to go to school, and I see like that can appear somewhat inconsistent with what I'm outlining here about anarchy. But I think in practicality is kind of where a lot of my like policy positions come from. It's more like pragmatic.
Okay, and interesting. So where do you were you always like maybe on that left, or did you grow to that side? How did you come to that position?
So I think I've always been like in my heart, I guess I've probably always been like somewhat progressive. It was really around. I think a lot of people had like political awakenings, or during like the rise of Trump and everything. And I was one of them. I think I just didn't really care about politics historically, and then I saw Trump coming to power, and I saw all these people voting for him, and I was like, "Are you guys listening to this guy? This is insane!" And I started realizing that a lot of people have some pretty insane beliefs, and that they have there's a lot of people with insane beliefs that have a lot of power, and are using those beliefs to make people's lives like really bad. And I think that's something that needs to be kind of pushed against. And that was kind of my like coming into my the political awakening, I guess.
Interesting. And so like I think I resonate with that. I sympathize with that, and I kind of have the same feelings towards different things in my life.
Hmm.
About wanting to speak up or say things, but as my individual anarchist views go, like I'm detached from changing the system. What are like I don't believe in changing the system. You do,
Hmm.
um, and like what's a way? Like you said CRT, but what
Yeah,
are the ways do you want to see the system change? You said reparations, but aside from that,
sure.
um,
What other policies?
yeah, like what, like
Mhm.
what's wrong with society? Because I'm curious to know
So
because I don't. Yeah, go ahead.
I guess I would start with like we have I mean, the biggest ones in America probably are things like the healthcare system, education system, the prison system. Um, uh, there's like people having access to like clean food or healthy food, clean water. And I mean, obviously, a lot of those things we have a lot better than a lot of other places. But not only do we, I mean, healthcare, for example, we're ranked like 35th in the world, despite being like the richest country in the world, which is really embarrassing. And we also see in all of these different domains, we also see like massive disparities depending on your race or your class, or your race and your class. And I think those are things that can be pushed against like within the existing system without like any massively radical changes. Although I'm not necessarily opposed to somewhat radical changes, you know?
Yeah. Okay. And so like I agree with those systems, right? Like I like all those systems are fucked, and I put big education in that system as well, right? Like this, it's turned into like the prison system. It's a 2 pipeline series, right? Like so, it's what do they call it? School to prison pipeline for the marginalized, disadvantaged people. That's very real, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's almost determined by 2nd or 3rd grade, which is even the saddest part.
Yeah. GG, by the way, we did good. No, we did well. Superman does good. We did well.
Coder, why didn't you score any points?
Because I was focused. So what I do when I go the center route, I focus on leveling up as quickly as possible, and then I use my arrows and I just knock out the opponents everywhere I can, so that the rest of my team can handle going off and scoring points and without being hindered too much.
Okay, you're a specialty player then?
Yeah, I would say. I mean, it's just my main focus is leveling up so that like I can knock out as many obstacles as possible, and also like try to cuck the other team by knocking out their like their higher any of their like high XP like Pokemon. If I try to catch theirs, especially the Bouffalant and Ludicolo in the center area. If you can like take those away from them, it prevents them from leveling up as quickly, and then they have a much harder time when we have like combat.
Okay. So you what's the term called? Like because I think I'm a lane guy.
Yeah. Well, I guess I am. So there are like
bottom lane.
Yeah. There's like top, bottom, and center. And I go the center route. I try to always go the center route unless someone takes it from me, because there should only really be one person going that route, and then you should have 2 people taking the top path, and they're like scoring points, defending the goal zone, and the same thing for the bottom path.
I think it's interesting how we can have like a conversation that almost is antagonistic, right? But in the sense we're not in total agreement, but we're playing a game where we're on a team. This is kind of the fun thing I thought about. Like,
yeah,
this is the cool aspect.
It is fun.
So, but with what I was saying is, and then the other pipeline is school to college, right, which creates debt and wage slaves, right? So you have 2 tiers of slavery, right? Because prison is slavery, right? People
definitely prison. I am sympathetic to the phrase wage slavery, but I think it's really important not to conflate that with something like the prison slavery system. I think it's a really important distinction.
Radical Coder, I'm actually an abolitionist. I don't know if you've met one in a while, right? But during the 1850, like the movement up to the Emancipation Proclamation, the real ones out there, the real abolitionists, they were arguing for a complete ban on slavery, right? So the educated minds were not just calling for an end to I think it was called chattel slavery in the South, but they called it wage slavery, or like the company slavery that was occurring in the North, right? And it's been a problem for a long time, but when we had the illusion of defeating slavery with the Emancipation Proclamation or whatever, 13th Amendment, the whole other aspect of corporation and company slavery just got pushed to the side, right? But there was a time, right, during the abolitionist movement where I would say absolutely people did understand, and they fought against chattel slavery just as much as they did against wage slavery. So I know there's contention with the word, but I think historically it's important to understand these abolitionists who fought for freedom for everybody, right? Because slavery is multifaceted and one ugly beast. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's going on today in our country and many different facets. But I do understand your regard for the word wage slavery in relation to prison slavery, because it is different
Yeah.
in some regards.
Yeah, and again, like I as someone who's like so when I think like capitalism, I'm thinking about like specifically like private property. I think a lot of people conflate like capitalism and like markets, and I think markets have existed like as long as society's existed, as long as there's been people trading things and exchanging goods in any way. I think that's where markets are. So I think it's really important not to let capitalism monopolize the idea of markets. So I think the main thing is like this particular kind of private ownership and wage like for like the scraping of profit without like a voice about like what's done with that profit. And so like I do see like aspects of slavery and like not having a voice in what's done like the company does, but again the conditions are so drastic that I think your average liberal I think it's a losing talking point for like leftists like myself, because like the average liberal, when they hear like wage slavery, they're like, what are you talking about, like that's not slavery, they think chattel slavery.
Yeah, and that's what I would call neurolinguistic program. It's actually a problem, right? This encapsulating of slavery to one time in history. I feel like it's probably the worst thing that could happen to people in understanding that, and typically these people believe in evolution. They're Darwinists, and they can't understand that evolution can evolve and change over time, right? And so I get your sentiment, and it's just frustrating because as someone who sees slavery as multifaceted, and for other people to not call it what it is because of reverence for slavery in the past, I think is a disservice to not only slavery that's occurring now, but slavery that will occur in the future. And it is wage slavery, right? Like 100%. What they were doing in families and children in the past, having them work in crowded factories, all types of inhumane situations. And there's this guise of freedom, right? Like, don't call like the Chi-Com where they make the iPhones, right? That's wage slavery. They have suicide nets, right? So that to me, there's an era of like, oh, well, they have freedom. They're working.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
You know what I mean? Like, oh, they are, yeah, this person's working. They're so free. They grew up in what would it be called? A food desert, a high crime rate neighborhood. Everything was pitted against them. Look how free they are. That's kind of where I see that. What are your thoughts?
I think I agree with most of what you said there.
In some part, perhaps.
Yeah,
I'm basically against corporations and slavery.
Yeah.
And this idea that, I think we should be more charitable with what we call slavery, so we can maybe get these companies to pay attention, right? Like if we just started calling what's happening in China and what they're doing with the iPhones and what they're doing in Africa with these open pit mines slavery, right? And these are jobs people have.
Yeah.
It's slavery.
I would agree with. I think you'd probably so my issue with using that word in that context it's less like, again, I kind of agree with the sentiment, but like in practicality I think it kind of alienates like the liberals who would otherwise like be on my side about the prescriptions, and so I do think that like that referring to those like of course like child labor and all that stuff, like I think that's much easier to identify and label as a form of slavery than just like someone who like works for like I don't know, McDonald's or even like Lockheed Martin, like I think all these people could be considered wage slaves to varying degrees, but I don't know if that's like something that I could sell like a liberal on, and that I think I agree that it's like there is like a programming to it, like there's kind of a conditioning of like what that word can only mean, and then maybe there are ways to push back against that. But in terms of like rhetoric at the moment, I just think it's a kind of a losing battle.
I respect that, and I think I hear your opinion, and it does make sense to me why people are hardline stance on what words mean and the impact on using a word, because that's kind of where society's going, right? Like every word means something, and you have to be conscious and thoughtful, because words are loaded now, right? They even have like phrases like dog whistle for certain words, right?
Yeah, and I use that word. Yeah.
Yeah, because language is so loaded
Yeah,
in some ways,
absolutely.
right? And so with that, I do understand what you're saying, and I do respect it, and I think that's a fair, absolutely a fair response. Because no matter what, like if you do talk to the people on the left, they are going to be maybe not as receptive when you do use language that I'm using.
And if I'm like pushing for like political advocacy, and I want people to be like voting in line with my values and stuff, then I have to be really concerned about like what kind of language would push them away from that. And if like, yeah, that's kind of my issue.
Certainly, and the whole language game people play. What do you think about so whether it's anarchists are it's one word that gets used when Antifa or anarchists or people who throw bricks through a target,
Yeah,
and that to me is not an anarchist,
I
right?
totally agree. Yeah, I think that's kind that the idea that people have in their mind of an anarchist is similarly like bastardized, and I would say to the benefit of people who have authority in the existing hierarchies, because they probably on average like would not very much want people to use these words in terms of like challenging authority. They'd rather imagine like if people identify as anarchists, then they'd rather that like the liberals I was referring to imagine them being brick throwing psychopaths, rather than people who are pushing back against an unjustified authority.
Absolutely. And with that, like, so this word gets used, like, how do you put it? Do you think progressives are kind of put on the same label, unjustly, or even the alt right? Like, how if they're using that word with anarchy and maybe misrepresenting it, do you think they're doing it to both sides? Because that's what I see, right? Like, everybody's either clumped into being extreme alt right,
Mm-hmm.
or alt right, or extreme like progressive alt left. It seems as though the middle or like anything close to that's just been left. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I do think there is a lot to that, but I think we are like increasingly polarized. Um, there like more people are. I mean, there's like way more people who have like real political opinion, or more people have access to like information about politics and stuff than ever before. So people tend to find themselves in one camp or another, especially when we have this like the two party system. We don't have any sort of like ranked choice voting. We don't have a lot of ways for like candidates outside of these establishment parties to get into the race, or like I of course I really like Bernie, but he just simply wasn't. He didn't have the popularity, and young people don't vote. So yeah, I think I kind of rambled there, but I don't know. Does that engage with your question?
Oh, absolutely. It's funny you say you were a fan of Bernie and you said he didn't have the momentum. I actually disagree with you. I think Bernie was far more popular than Hillary Clinton.
I wish.
And
I want to live in that
you
world.
don't really.
He was in terms of youth, yeah, for sure. In terms of young people, yeah, absolutely. In terms of people who go to the ballot booth, no. Obviously not, because he got like way less votes than she did, right?
Yeah, you could think that, but I think
Well, I
there's a
mean,
little bit.
to think otherwise, you would have to be certain there was like some like there was actually like manipulation in terms of like ballot manipulation, which I don't really. I mean, to varying degrees, there is like voter suppression. Obviously, the Republican Party does not like it when especially like black people vote. But I don't think that like Bernie was incredible. Like he was probably fairly popular in the black community, but I don't think that was like that the voter suppression there was like would have been enough, or like undoing that would have won him the vote or anything, or won him the nomination. Yeah.
I was thinking of it's more of like a technical matter of how representatives and delegates are elected for like states. So you could have Bernie be more popular, just like with an election with Hillary and Donald Trump. Hillary could have been less popular in a state, but the way they gerrymandered the distribution of the Democratic votes, she would win. I would say, I forget what state it was, but she would come out as a winner, right? And I think that's something to the point of where I was saying, like, even in the left or the right, like, there's these drawing of lines of political parties where it's almost as like, you know what, Bernie was, I think, he was the most popular person, I think, but he wasn't chosen to be the representative by the Democrat system.
I think it was both. I mean, like, yes, I think I agree that the Democrats like didn't want Bernie. I agree that there were like a lot of like special interests and stuff that like pushed. That were very very much against the idea of Bernie being like the Democratic nominee. But I don't think even. I mean, and we could even say that like all of that contributed to like why people ended up voting the way they did. But at the end of the day, like he just didn't have the support that we if we want a Bernie, if we want someone like Bernie, then we have to get the votes. That's just the way we do it here, you know, like that's how our democracy works, for better for worse. Again, like we just have to we need the votes, and so if he didn't have them, and that's what the numbers say, you know, then that's like, you know, regardless of what pathway we take towards trying to get into a situation where we do have those votes, at the end of the day, we just didn't.
Oh, yeah, I can relate to that. What do you say about we transition to opening it up? You want to bring some new voices in here and we have some fun?
Yeah, I know Ben. Ben seems very anxious to come in. He's been hanging out in the stream or in the stream waiting for a while. What do you think?
That's who wants to come up.
What's that?
That's who wants to come up.
Yeah, he's the only one in the waiting room. But I mean, I guess I'll let the let the stream know, or I'll let everyone in the chat know if you do want to join in. I posted the Discord link. I'll post it again if you haven't joined. But I think a lot of the people I see in here are already in. But you're welcome to come in as long as you're willing to have a civil conversation and not scream any obscenities.
I think we've been pretty civil so far.
Yeah, for now, because you haven't triggered me yet. I'm just kidding.
Not yet, but I think me and you are, like I said at the beginning of the start of your show, we've been going over a little bit of an hour here. I think it's been obvious throughout the discussion. Me and you don't agree on everything, right?
Of course.
Yeah, but it's nice to have this kind of conversation with people. I wish more people would do this, right? Like you can have conversations with people, and you know, we're not trying to change either. I don't feel like you're proselytizing or trying to change my mind. We're just sharing ideas and thoughts, and I really appreciate that.
To be clear, I am actually. I do want to change. Like the things that when I give you pushback on a specific thing, like I'm hoping that you'll come closer to what I believe about the thing. That's generally, unless I'm wrong about the thing, then I'm willing to I'm always willing to learn and grow. Like I'm certainly fallible, like all people, right? But like I am interested in like when I talk about politics, it's because I care about the like what's happening in them, and I want more people to align with my politics so that I can actually see like the next time, like if I want the next Bernie to get those votes, I have to convince more people to vote for him. I have to convince more people that that's a better world, that's important to do, that voting matters, that these things, that the shape of the Supreme Court is and who the president is, and what the Supreme Court looks like, and people's access to healthcare and people's access to education and all these different things are really like they're influenced by these like in aggregated individual choices. So every little small bit that I can like sway someone, I think is better for my goals. You know, I am obviously I'm a very small I'm a tadpole in an ocean, but I am. I would say that I speak attempting to be persuasive.
Yeah, and I do appreciate that. I think it is important. It means you're passionate, right? It's good to be passionate about these things than talking about them. It's almost better you're doing what you're doing than perhaps what I'm doing, where I'm not really trying to persuade people, because I don't think I have the answers, but I think you at least have maybe not the answers, but perhaps what you think is a better view of the world, and you're trying to go towards that. And I respect you doing that. I think it's a good thing at the end of the day, even if I disagree, right, with some of the ways you might want to do that. I think it's a good thing that you are passionate and you do want to change people's minds. I love that, Coder. Yeah,
I appreciate that. Like even if I was talking like if I were to give advice to like a Republican in similar shoes to me, or like a very hyper conservative person, and I wanted them to have the best path. I don't, for the record, I don't want them to have. I'm very very scared of the Republican Party in the United States, to be completely honest. But if I were to give them advice, like I would be encouraging them to also go out and be persuasive and try to convince more people of to be in line with their beliefs, so that they can get those votes for their for the things that they advocate for. Of course, if you're a conservative, please don't vote. Unless you're going to vote Democratic, generally, for the most part, I think it's worse when you're voting for Republicans. So, if you're going to vote for Republican, just stay home. It's cool. I'm not mad at that. If you don't think voting matters and you're on the far right, you're correct. You shouldn't. No, you're not correct. Voting does matter, but I just don't want you to vote. I would never make it illegal for you to vote. I think you should have the right to vote, but I think the world would be worse with more Republican candidates in power, right? So, yeah.
It's funny you say that. I think. How about this, Radical Coder? People talk about. I want to get your pushback on this. People will talk about the systematic oppression of white men in our country. All right. Do you know who gave women the right to vote overwhelmingly?
Who gave them the right? Wait. I think
who legalized? Who made it a law? Like who
probably the people who were allowed to be in politics and able to actually make political decisions, right? But it was probably at the it was probably due to tons and tons of activists, many of which were women, right, who were putting pressure in the various areas that led to that outcome and agree, intersecting interests,
Because you talk, it's important when you say who made the change, right? And the change are the systematic oppression, and you have a demographic group, right, like that you paint as the oppressors, right? Isn't that true?
I don't tend to speak in that phrasing, but I'm not. I just I think people get the wrong impression by that language, but I do see it that way, I guess. But
okay.
I don't
agree.
I don't think that I don't like. I'm not like. I'm not gonna grovel at the feet of white men for giving white women the right to vote.
Yeah.
I think it was a good thing that happened, right? But
yeah, and then also who died in a war and all voted unanimously, an all white Senate and who voted to free slaves?
The people who were allowed to vote.
Okay, so
here's
my point, though.
Yeah.
Here's my point. If you call out who makes the chains, right, you should acknowledge who breaks the chains.
Yeah, and I don't not acknowledge that.
But I think it's something that gets overlooked on the left, right? Like, it's, to me, if you demonize a whole subgroup or a group of people like white systematic oppressors, which
I'm not interested in demonizing anybody, to be clear, except maybe the Republican Party, but I'm not interested in I don't demonize white people. I am white. I am white people. I don't know. I don't think I should be demonized. I don't know. I'm not. I don't tend to frame things in that way.
Let me be more specific. I just find this odd from the left paradigm, where it's easy to point to the systematic oppression, right? But when a group of good white people, like, quote unquote, whatever it might be called, who do vote, quote unquote, to give women the right to vote, it's not acknowledged as like a progressive benefit. Like, look, society got better, and people are trying, even at the top, right? This system you and I both disagree with, this nepotism, WASP, Anglo-Saxon, white Protestant, ruling culture class society, still making progress though, right? And I sometimes I just get bothered by the left and their focus on typecasting history, right? Because when you typecast history, I think you do it a disservice, right? Because there are a lot of people who, from the beginning of coming to America, were anti-slavery.
Yeah, I was actually about to follow up and say there's always been white abolitionists. I certainly don't disagree with that. And there's always been people who recognized what was going on was wrong, and thought it should end. And I think that they've always been on the right side of history in that regard.
And so this little thing, this kind of ties into CRT. I think that that little conversation we just had might never happen in someone who's too focused on painting the full picture of CRT, right?
I would actually, I totally disagree, because in fact I listen to a lot of voices of people who kind of proselytize critical race theory, and who talk about it, and a lot of these people they tend to talk about things like how there were these like white abolitionists, and there always have been these white allies who have like helped, you know, along the way, as just as well as there's always been revolutionaries who were under the thumb of that oppression.
I like that. That's good to hear, Coder. And then I want to lead into this, kind of like what I don't understand about the Civil War. I think about this. We can even talk about the Three-Fifths Clause and my perspective on that, if you're interested.
I suppose I do. Do we want to open it up and bring Ben on? Or
It's up to you, man. It's your show.
Yeah,
If
that's
you
true.
wanna
It is my
spice it
show.
up, go
But
ahead.
you're the guest. I mean, we can throw him in. Let's go through this the Three-Fifths thing. What do you have to say about it? And then after that, we'll bring him
I'm
on.
not sure if I've already had this conversation with you, so if I'm repeating myself, stop me. Feel free. I think we have had this conversation.
I think also, sorry, you have to press whatever buttons to get back to the lobby so we can do another round.
There we go. The Three-Fifths Clause. So before I give you my thought on the Three-Fifths Clause, can you give me yours?
I would have to. I mean, obviously, I think it was like it wasn't good. I mean, it was probably better than not counting. I think it was kind of my understanding. My history, a lot of my history is really rusty. This is something I want to do. Actually, I want to spend a lot of time on my streams moving forward, like getting a better understanding of not just U.S. but world history. But in terms of that particular like compromise, it seems like the idea was that the states that had a lot of slaves, they wanted to have the voting power or more voting power, right? And so they used this compromise as a way to use those human bodies as political tools, while without giving them actually the right to engage in politics. So you know, we can call it a compromise, but I don't know. It's yeah. I mean, it's pretty cringe looking back on it, but you know, obviously, it was a complicated system.
Certainly, I'll need an invite to join your thing. My understanding of the Three-Fifths Clause, what you might think is that, well, like you were right? The South wanted to count these people for their voting power, right? But the issue there comes then, if you follow that line of thinking, would the South prefer them to be three-fifths or a whole person, right? Because if it's about population and the amount of representatives you had, you would prefer to have a whole person instead of three-fifths. Well, then you get into the issue of, well, who argued for three-fifths, right? It wasn't the South. The South wanted slaves to be counted as a whole person. And the North said, my basic understanding, the North said, if you count the slaves as a whole person, you're going to have complete dominance over our, Congress. It's going to be an inaccurate representation. And by the way, you don't even really count those people as people. Mm-hmm. So the North, in a way to fight the progress of the southern states and their rise, right, bartered for three-fifths instead of being counted as a whole person. So it looks on the face of it, right, racist, but the people arguing for a full representation were the racists, right? The anti-racists were arguing for three-fifths because three-fifths would minimize the power of the racists from expanding slavery states into the West, and expanding their ideology and their beliefs on a state and federal level. Yeah,
so I guess I think I agree with that analysis. I guess the one extra piece I would add is that, like, you kind of touched on this, but like if those states did, like, they wanted to like count them as a full person in terms of like the political power, but they didn't want to give them the rights that they would be expected to if they were to count them as a human being, right? So that's it is interesting the way that kind of contradiction. I don't know if I'd say the anti-racist position was three-fifths necessarily. I mean, in contrast to like the anti-racist position would have probably been like more like abolition, right? Like more towards like not just being counted as a full person, but also having the rights of a full person, like
Yeah,
twofold,
that,
right? Rather than just
I,
one or the other, or what, like 3/5 or one in terms of like voting power for people who weren't them.
yeah, true abolitionists would have just said, free them right now.
Yeah, yeah, ideally, yeah,
Yeah, absolutely, and don't even bother trying to figure out if they're a person or not. They are a person.
yeah, exactly.
100%. But yeah, that's kind of my view on the three fifths clause. Is that yeah, it's ugly as fuck on the face of it, and it's even uglier when you understand that the South wanted to count these people as a full person without even
Hmm.
really giving them sovereignty or authority or
Yep.
any type of anything resembling freedom. So
Yeah, absolutely. Well, with that, I did just change the title of the stream to Open Panel with Provo Kid about anarchy. So I'm gonna go ahead and for better or for worse, I'm gonna pull Ben on